So in general, application layer denial of service, rather than trying to exhaust the limited resources it's trying to exhaust, instead of it being the network or the memory, it's the capacity of the service that's under attack. And we saw an example here where there's tremendous asymmetry, where the attacker's workload is very low. The expense to the attacker is very low compared to the expense to the defender. And whenever you have that kind of asymmetry, that's when these denial of service attacks are potentially dangerous. Okay, so how do you defend against this? Well, one approach is, let's say you've chosen good algorithms with good worst case performance, but there's still some requests that could take a long time, lookups into some database or something like that. One approach is to authenticate the user and only let legitimate, authorized, known good users issue those requests that are expensive. Okay, so that's sometimes possible. That relies on being able to authenticate users and knowing which ones are trusted, which might not make any sense for a public service, but might make sense for others. Also, there's a challenge that the authentication step itself might be expensive, might become a target of denial of service attacks. So you got to be careful about that. Another approach that's been seen in a few cases is to force legitimate users to burn some of their own resources, like money or time, before they're allowed to use the server. So one example would be for spam. One of the defense that was proposed was before you could send an email, your computer has to spend 1 second of CPU time wasted, basically, and prove to the recipient that you've done that. And that will make it hard to send a million spam emails. It'll take a long time for attackers to do that. The classic, case of this, the most clear-cut case of this approach that's being used is a Bitcoin, where people are required to burn a tremendous amount of CPU or GPU time to mint a coin. And if they can prove they've done that, then it enables them to participate in the process of basically writing log entries to the financial ledger system. Okay, so that's a defense against denial of service. And a third of defense, which is probably the most typically used today, is to over-provision, just massively over-provision. You provide a service with way more capacity than needed. And so if you think of something like Cloudflare, that's how they defend websites against denial of service, is they have their own content delivery network where they have tens of thousands of servers around the world, and they'll host your website on all of them if necessary. They have so much capacity, way more capacity than your service is likely to need in ordinary operation, just waiting for it. If needed, it can be called up. Okay, so to summarize denial of service, defending against program flaws, one type of denial of service attack exploits a flaw in the program. Defend against that, you use your software quality measures. The other kind of denial of service attack involves exhausting some limited resource. Defending from that can be really hard. So we talked about isolation, we talked about scheduling, we talked about sandboxing, and authenticating users and only allowing authenticated users to access, to use the resource, maybe with some controls based on a quota. Okay, so in general, there's no silver bullet answer to most denial of service threats, but you can use some of these techniques for mitigating them.